Well, good afternoon and welcome to our panel discussion on the future of personal banking. That was such a wonderful tee-up and framing for the conversation. I'm Sarah Morgenstern. I'm a venture partner at Flourish Ventures, an early-stage fintech fund. And as digital technology has transformed the industry, personalization has been top of mind for many institutions. And on the one hand, seemingly holds immense potential to foster customer engagement and deepen loyalty, with 70% of consumers indicating that they highly prize personalization. And yet on the other hand, it's proven awfully difficult to do right. Truly personalizing banking in a way that creates durable consumer value has been difficult. And so this afternoon, we're going to explore both sides of that coin. What's working, what are the success stories, as well as where are the challenges surfacing. And fortunately, I'm joined by a terrific set of panelists. They bring a wealth of expertise and experience to this conversation. Really excited to hear their perspectives. I'll ask everyone to give a quick introduction of yourself and your organization, and then we'll dive into the conversation.
Perfect. Yeah, I can kick it off. Nice to meet you guys. My name is Ahan. I'm the general manager of Helix by Q2. If you haven't heard of Helix, Helix is one of the largest banking-as-a-service platforms in the space today. We have about 14 million users on the platform. But the really interesting thing, particularly in the context of this conversation, is we work with a bunch of really different companies, from Credit Karma to Betterment to Acorns to Gusto to Rocket Mortgage. And if you know those companies, you know that they serve different people, and they're all kind of trying to push the envelope of what's possible in this space. And at Helix, our mission is to make finance human, so create a world where we actually build products around people. So really excited to dive into this topic, and thanks for the invite.
Awesome. So I think the turn is mine. I'm Hanoi. I'm the CEO and co-founder of 5e. What we do is quite interesting because we try to build actually personalization for banks. So I love this conversation. What we've created is a platform that basically allows banks to understand their own customer data and try to translate that into insights that they can use to sell more, to communicate effectively. I always say that I want to finish or to end with that moment where you receive a call from the bank trying to sell you something that is not relevant. That's what we've tried to solve for. And basically, in just 3 months, what we do is that we transform a traditional bank into what we call a fintech powerhouse, allow them to literally utilize their data for the benefit of their customer and really turn into true customer-centric organizations. So we love to work with traditional banks that are trying to do something for their customers, turn into customer-centric organizations, and really turn their own data into something that they can leverage real time.
Hi, I'm Cynthia Kleinbaum. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer at Money Lion. We have a B2B and a B2C side of the business. The B2B side of the business is a marketplace, a programmatic marketplace that basically provides personalized offers of financial products to consumers. And the B2C side of the business, it's an app that on the surface looks like many of the neobanks, but it really has 3 elements that are pretty unique. One of them, the content piece. When you land, if you don't have it, I really encourage you to check it out because it's really cool what we built. It feels like Instagram or TikTok, but for financial information, financial education. We also have a marketplace, so whatever you learned on the content side, you can actually act on. The marketplace, obviously, it's powered by our B2B side. And we have our own products, first-party products, especially a credit building loan and a cash advance product, but we have others, investing, crypto, and the personalization is super important because we have so many things that somebody can come and do in our app, and our average customer comes twice a day. When somebody comes twice a day, it's more of a behavior of a social media app, less of a behavior of a financial app. And if we are not good at personalizing and at telling you what's the next best action you can take, then it's like they're lost, they don't know, like they think we're dumb because we're not telling them that we know what's best for them to do after. So personalization is an important topic for us.
Thanks.
My name's Katie Pegenkoff, and I'm the Director of Strategy at Project 202. I'm a consultant, sorry. And we will work with banking clients to help them identify what experiences they might want to personalize, design them, build them, and then ultimately release them to the marketplace.
You've got a bunch of ex-consultants here. You're in a safe space. Well, thank you for those introductions. So we're going to make our way through the good, the bad, and the ugly. Let's start with the good. We've seen significant technology advancements over the past decade, mobile, cloud, machine learning. What's the state of play of personal digital banking in 2023, and what are some of the leading examples of how it's being implemented at scale?
Yeah, I'm happy to chime in on that one. I think personalization in banking has become more relevant than it's honestly ever been. And a part of the reason is what you said, which is historically, companies and banks haven't really had a lot of tools to be able to personalize their products. They've kind of had this one size fits all fed into them from the traditional providers. And that's meant if I want to treat the 5 of us differently as customers because of the unique context that I have, you couldn't really do that. And at the same time, you have a whole bunch of these companies who are starting to build, like Moneyline, like Betterment and Credit Karma and others, who are getting into this space and who bring this kind of design philosophy of more human-centric design, right? So they're used to a world that we're all used to in the technology world, which is products are built around us and around the context that we have and around what we specifically need. And so those two things intersecting at the same time is already quite a bit. But then you think about what is the challenge that companies are dealing with today. I think if you're talking to companies on the floor, what they're probably saying is I'm focused around profitability, right? And I'm focused on driving engagement. And what you pretty quickly realize is that 2 of the most important vectors for a banking business, engagement and fraud, actually have a tie in between of personalization. Because here's the problem. If you put a set of stringent fraud rules to try and curb your fraud, but that hurts your best customers and stops them from using the product, that's no good. And on the flip side, if you have really lax rules, then you're going to go incur a whole bunch of fraud. And so how do you incentivize people to continue engaging and reward them for that engagement by evolving the product as they evolve, while simultaneously getting serious and pulling down basically fraud from that cohort of people that are defrauding your business? And so personalization has gone from a concept that is nice to bring to an essential component of driving engagement. And I love Cynthia's example around the number of things that Moneyline does for their customers, because like, think about it. If you open an app and you get 12,000 options, you're going to have analysis paralysis. But if you get 5 super relevant options, you're going to use it. And the battleground that we're all now fighting is this battleground of driving engagement and fraud. So for those reasons, the technology piece, the macro piece, and then also this need for profitability, I think personalization has become at the forefront of digital banking today.
Others on what this looks like in practice?
Yeah, like I think that you gave a really sophisticated answer to, I think that is a very simple problem as well, which is that customers for the first time are in control, right? And we have really high expectations. Like, to be honest, when we interact with banks, we kind of brace ourselves for impact. Frustration is freaking slow. They treat you like they don't know you. It doesn't matter if you've been banking with them forever, right? So I think that finally, right, what is going on as well, apart from everything that you've said, is that suddenly we have options that we didn't have before, right? We have new players that suddenly talk to us about money in a way that we finally understand, and we want to gear towards that, right? And at the same time, we have everything here at our fingertips in just a second. So why, if I can write my next email to a stakeholder, to an investor, that is super complicated, and what if I can write that in just a second thanks to ChatGPT, but it takes me a day to deal with my bank, right? It just doesn't make sense. So I think that consumers' expectations are so high, and we are so volatile for banks right now, because before we only had a few options, but now we have so many options. And when you look at statistics, you see that 75% of customers, of banking customers, are willing to switch to any fintech that will give them a better product or service. That is fucking scary. Sorry. So I think that that is a great driver. I don't know if there is a sense of urgency around it, but I think that is a great driver for banks in terms of really realizing that, oh yeah, shit, we need to personalize this, because otherwise any person with a little thingy is gonna come here and is gonna really be competitor to us. So customer expectation increasing, I think, is a major driver as well for the interest, thank God, finally, interest in personalization in banking.
I mean, couldn't agree more. I also think that if you think about the progress in like crawling, walking, running. I see the fintech industry, forget about traditional banks because one size fits all, but fintech is probably like crawling, not walking, not running. And I come from retail, so I really expected a different level of personalization when I came to the fintech industry, because what's happening in retail, when we talk about personalization, it's not just about putting the right product in front of you. Just like imagine that you go to like a website of like a fashion brand, and they're gonna show you that based on your behavior, let's say the dress that better fits what you're probably looking for, but you're gonna actually see it with a model that looks like you, right? And why? Because they know that if they show you how the dress is gonna look in you, you're more likely to buy it, you're gonna identify yourself. We are, in fintech, at least in MoneyLion, we've done a really good job at figuring out what's the right product for you, it's a big deal because we use a very large amount of data to find the right, let's say the right lender that's gonna be approving you, that's gonna give you the loan that you want with the rates that you want. But we talk to everyone the same way. And you may be requesting a loan for reason A, while somebody else may be going through the exact same funnel, but is going to use the loan for something else. Or somebody may be requesting a $1,000 loan, and somebody else using the same funnel for a $100,000 loan. And the marketing that I have to do to talk to them, it's different. And to me, that's the level of personalization that we have to get to talk to them in a language that recognizes who they are and what they're going to react more to, and not just like a blanket marketing message for everyone. So, crawling.
Okay, we're going to come back to crawling. Katie, anything else on what you're seeing that's working well, or sort of the best examples of where personalization is being deployed effectively?
I'm a fan of TD Bank and their purchase of Layer 6 back in, I think, 2019. And they used that to kind of jumpstart their whole personalization program, and initially came out with a first use case of account balance, like low account alerts. So in terms of North America, like that's who I kind of look to as the leaders in personalization.
Okay, great. Well, that gives us a nice flavor of sort of what's happening today in 2023. Why are we still crawling? So the next question is sort of, we've described this huge range of potential benefits. Where are we falling short on personalization, and why? What are the challenges to implementation it successfully?
The lawyers. I think it's two things, the lawyers and the steam of the team, the energy that a team has to actually make it happen. Because the regulation, it's intense, and it's there for a reason. Like, we don't want to be able to truly personalize, we have to use a lot of data points, and we have to be very careful of like not having data breaches or not using that data in a way that either exacerbates biases or just like makes things worse. And what I saw when I joined MoneyLion was that we had to work with our lawyers. And I assure you that many times companies get told you can't do this, and then the marketing team at least says, okay, I guess it can't be done. Let's just segment it. Instead of personalize it, let's just create 5 segments, see how it works. Like, we just give up too quickly because it's expensive also to build it. Like, to build it well. And to build it well, you have to have use cases that are strong enough. Like, I think it's a big investment for a company, and it's something that you have to work with your lawyers on. So for us, it has been, we're sure it's gonna work, so we're going for it, but I've seen others giving up on their efforts because of that.
Yeah, and piggybacking on that sort of cross-functional collaboration generally, whether it's between the marketing team and the data science team, or right, this is not one unit can implement this. What are other barriers that folks have observed?
Well, I think kind of dovetailing on that point, like, part of the reason it's so challenging for the lawyers is because as regulators are looking at it, they're seeing it, as Hanoi put it, the customer's at the center, right? As the CFPB goes and looks at this kind of thing, they're trying to make sure, is what you're doing in the best interest of the customer, right? And so you may think, okay, I have all of this data about these users, I'm going to pull it all together, I'm going to create my insights, and then I'm going to go personalize. But you have to make sure that you're not going to do something that's going to artificially hurt that consumer or give them an option that maybe they shouldn't go sign up for. And that's a delicate line to balance, right? Because in this type of personalization, unlike the personalization of your Netflix feed or of your Google feed, like this is your livelihood, you know? And so that's, I think, one of the challenges, because when a regulator is coming in and trying to understand, well, how does this product work? You need to be able to explain not just the different segments, as you mentioned, but also what moves someone from one segment into another. Like, why do you use those indicators? What does that do for the customer? How do you show that? So I think that's one set of challenges. I think another set of challenges that sometimes people struggle with, and it's, you know, folks like Moneyline are further along in this journey, but there's a lot of data out there, right? First, getting access to it for people who are on legacy providers can be really challenging, right? Because for personalization to be relevant, you must first understand. And to understand, you must make sense of this cloud of data, and to make sense of it, you must have access to it, right? So data access and then the ability to build contextual understanding from data is something that I think different companies and banks are at different levels of maturity on. And if personalization is something that's brand new to you, then having a firm like some of the folks who are on the board today is actually really valuable, right? Because they can help you make sense of the data that you have. But if you're starting from scratch and trying to figure out what are the insights that I can actually pull out of that data, that can sometimes be challenging. So I guess I would say creating a durable regulatory framework that you can kind of explain and help push the industry forward with, in the context of regulators tend to be a little bit behind the 8 ball and things like this, plus the technological and sort of complexity around building that understanding from data seems to be some of the things that are preventing people from crossing that chasm. But to Hanoi's point, we're finally at this place where consumers are demanding this and they expect it in their lives. Companies have to do it because it's how they're going to improve the overall profitability and success of their long-term business. And the technology's finally there, right? So the pieces are in play, but that's some of what people are navigating.
Any others? Data architecture,
Yeah,
regulatory environment, Hanoi, maybe
data
legacy tech?
protection and regulatory, because I think that you addressed that beautifully. I think that there is another aspect that is a huge barrier, and is that there are way too many cooks in the kitchen when it comes to financial institutions. And I've been in banking, I've worked at a bank. And it is crazy when we sit in front of the C-level suite, stakeholders, those decision makers at a bank, and we're like, hey, we can just take your data, spin it, and you have a fully personalized banking experience and a fully personalized bank or back office for you, right? And they're like, but wait a second, isn't that something that technology should be doing? Oh, but no, wait, those insights, is that from the digital team? Oh no, is that marketing? What about retail? And when it comes to making decisions, there are too many cooks in the kitchen, and each of those cooks, they have their own agenda. And many times, not to say most times, the agenda is not the customer, right? So when it comes to, because sometimes we think of data solutions and personalization as something that is so sophisticated, so far away, so complicated, and it can be something as simple as sending the right alert at the right time to remind you to pay your credit card. Something as simple as that. That could be the first step. There is nothing complicated around that, nothing. There is no regulatory issues, there are no legal issues, blaming on the lawyers. It's just that nobody can make the freaking decision because there are too many agendas. And I think that cultural change is also, and we don't typically talk about that, but it's so important. When a bank makes a decision, they need to be able to make that decision and make it quick and be able to have a common agenda and a common goal. And I think that is also lacking, right? So it adds to the difficulties of the sector.
Yeah, the one thing I would add is I think for some of my clients, they look at personalization as this like massive thing, and they're not picking off like small parts like the alerts. You don't have to boil the ocean. Like you can, I had a respondent tell me last year, she and her husband had just sold their home, and she got a mailer recommending a refinance, that she was very alarmed. Like, of course, like just stop doing that. Like that is a success for personalization.
Okay, thank you. Let's flip that question a little bit. And I imagine there's some in the audience who are earlier in the personalization journey. What advice would you all give as institutions embark in terms of strategy, operating model, tech stack? How do you do this right?
First, figure out why you're doing it, right? I think you have to start by an understanding of what is the problem that you were trying to solve and what are the components to that problem. And as kind of everyone on the stage just kind of talked through, solving that problem in pieces is the path, right? I think when people try and solve for the whole universe at once, when they've never done it before, they're gonna fail, right? They're setting themselves up to fail. But there's a ton of low-hanging fruit in your business where you can drive up engagement. You can actually meet the customer's need a lot more. And so if you have a good sense of what problem you're trying to solve and why you're trying to solve it, then catalyzing your whole organization to align to that North Star becomes a lot easier, because then everyone, whether you're in customer support or you're in client management or you're in operations, they know what they're trying to do, right? And so that starts to make it easier for you to take on those small pieces at a time. So I said that's one really important piece. Making sure, and I hate to harp on this, but making sure that you have access around the data and the ability to personalize at a technical level. Sometimes people make short-term optimized decisions around the type of platform they want to build on, only to later find that the type of personalization they realize is critical for their business is not possible with what they have. So think about the fact that you're going to need that in advance, so you're not making a decision that will limit your possibilities. And then have a data function over the long run, right? Like, you can't do complex data analysis and continue to evolve and iterate on that unless someone is owning that strategy. And so if you're serious about this, if you really want to go do it, then after you know, here's why I'm doing it, here's the low-hanging fruit that I'm going to go take, figure out structurally how are you going to make sure that your organization is all kind of aligned towards solving this problem and why it's going to matter for your business. Because otherwise it's going to become an afterthought. And I feel like you're not doing the personalization justice if you end up in that situation.
So I'm going to build on what you said, because we're going through an exercise like this right now. And so we're building, we built our own CDP, our own customer data platform, so we could personalize the experience of our customers. And how did we build it? We were a little bit, I mean, I must confess, paralyzed for a little bit of time, because we were like, what do we need to build? And I think it happens to a lot of data science and engineering teams, that they're like, okay, we want to build it, but what do we build? And the two things that worked for us to actually build it, and it was built quickly, was number one, have some really strong use cases of how you're going to use it right away. So for us, we had certain products in the marketplace that we wanted to test. So we said, okay, we need personas. Let's say we have an auto marketplace. We need personas. We need to identify people that may be in the market for an auto insurance. Help us figure out what are the data points in the CDP that will then help, like, signal, somebody will be triggered a message about auto insurance. So that's the first one, like, have a really solid and narrow use case of that personalization exercise. But the second part is just as important, which is, how does the future look like? In our case, we want to build something that we can at some point commercialize. So if I didn't tell my engineering team, at some point I'm going to want to sell this, and I'm going to want to sell this to companies that may not even be selling financial products. They would be building something that only works for me and only works for auto insurance. So have a use case that you can use right away, but also give the scope of what it could look in the future, because what happens a lot of times is that you can't scale. You can't scale either for more usage or broadly, like for different type of uses. That's what we did. And decide what you build in-house and what you outsource. I mean, for us, we have an engineering team that can build a lot of things, but we don't build everything in-house.
Cynthia, can I ask, as you all have embarked on this, how do you define success? How do you measure success? How do you evaluate what's working? Sort of what are the KPIs that we're using to assess efficacy?
So in this case, we do A/B tests. And you can really just do it if you have the scale, like enough scale to learn quickly. So number one, I mean, in the case of insurance, our goal was to get more people to click on the marketplace offers. So it's a very easy, like, an increase in clicks, then obviously it's an increase in revenue. So that's what we do. If it's loans, same, funded loans. We have a very clear view of the funnel. How does the funnel of the loans look like? Like how many people apply for a loan, get approved, click on it, and then fund the loan. So we know exactly where we're losing people, and improvements every step along the way would be improvements in the KPI. And then we calculate the ROI of, like, okay, if we do this for X amount of products, financial products that we have, how much revenue will that generate, how quickly will that pay back, and then we decide if this is something that we want to automate. Because we always start doing it manually. Like we of course are not gonna automate a new, like, personalized experience if we don't know if it's going to be better, because a lot of the work comes in the personalization. Like pulling a database of people that look like they're going to want auto insurance, pulling it manually, sending them an email, it's really low effort. Creating the automation, it's a little bit harder, so that's how we do it.
I think one really interesting thing in the way that you're approaching that and the way that we've seen a lot of our partners approach that, when it comes to picking what those use cases are going to be, like it's almost implicit in the way that you're talking about it, but it's starting with, okay, well, where did my customer feel pain? And then for the P&L of my business, what are the things that move the needle the most, right? Because yeah, I could go personalize this one tiny piece that they want, but if it doesn't move the needle, then why would I do that? And then how much effort is that going to take, right? Because what you will find is each of you in this room, your business makes money somehow, right? And there's something that is keeping you from increasing either the volume at which you do that or the ASP at which you do that or all of the underlying metrics that you're looking to optimize for. And so if you can find that Venn diagram, right, of what is the thing that's going to move the needle the most for you and the area where you have pain, I feel like that helps get to that first use case that Cynthia was talking about a second ago.
Yeah, I was just going to add that I sort of take the bias of like looking back at the people and like who your customer sets are. So in research, I've seen that there are certain pockets of consumers who have a kind of curiosity towards personalized experiences, and they seem to understand that technology is anticipating their needs. And they lean into that. And then there's another group that understandably is like creeped out and retreat from any sort of personalized offer. So if an organization is sort of at stalemate, trying to figure out like how to move forward with personalization, well, go after the people who you know are going to kind of lean into it, and then you'll ideally see more impact that'll have a greater impact on your KPIs, and you'll be able to sort of suss out a path forward.
Well, I mean, sorry, go off script. But I feel like what you're talking about is a little bit of a problem that we, whomever here is a marketer, as marketers have created, because we tell people we personalize their experience. We don't have to tell them, like, just give me a personalized experience. Show me what I'm gonna care about. And I think the problem is when we A, say that we personalize it because some people are creeped out, and B, because if we say we're personalizing it, if we don't actually personalize it, we look like much worse than if we hadn't said anything. And how many times I've seen marketing briefs that say, let's talk about how we personalize your experience, and you see like campaigns that say the personalized banking, personalized experience. Those are the things that you show. Those are not the things that you say. And I would encourage everyone not to speak about personalization, just personalize their experience. So,
well, I guess to pull that thread a little bit though, right? If you're one of the customers who are a little bit creeped out by personalization, I think one of the most valuable things that you are constantly negotiating with your customers is trust, right? Like, do they trust you? Do you trust them, right? And, you know, I think about like, I'm sure everyone here has had an Instagram ad that was like way too targeted, right? My wife is like at the point where she's like walking by my phone and she's like, kitchen remodel, in the hopes that at some point those ads will start popping up. But man, it's super creepy when you open that and you're like, wait a minute, I never searched for this. You must be listening to my conversations. And in that moment, my trust with Instagram goes down, right? I'm like, oh, there's a whole bunch of data that you're collecting about me and a whole bunch of stuff that you're doing that I had no idea about, and now I'm a little bit wary about how I engage. And at the same time, I see where you're coming from, which is like, if you over-index on this, you almost freak people out. And so I think that the question feels like to me, how do you navigate that in between, right? How do you not degrade the trust that you have with that individual, but still not introduce complexity that ruins the experience for them, right? And I feel like that's the dichotomy you have to navigate.
Katie, you've done interesting research on how personalized banking can either build or erode trust. Anything to add to this discussion around?
Should have something brilliant to say. When it comes to the trust aspect, I guess in my mind it comes down to like really knowing your customer, and knowing that in my mind personalization is not just for cross-sell or upsell. It's helping customers through product arrays. It's helping them make better choices. So you have to prove to the customer that you are using information about them for their benefit.
I mean, even a simple example that I feel like everyone here has been through, which is you're in a country you've never been in before, you swipe a card, it gets declined, you get a message that's like, hey, we didn't know you were going to be here, and so we just declined this. Is this you? And you're like, yes. In that moment, when I hit yes, I'm like, wow, I trust you more because you're looking out for this kind of thing, right? And so trust is just the integral of interactions over time, right? And so in every day-to-day opportunity that you have to engage with your customer, you're either building trust or removing trust, right? And so I think what people seek, it's the same thing as in community banking, right? Why do people work with the community banker? Because that person knows them, and that person trusts them, and will use that context to create a better experience. I think all we're talking about here is how do you scale that to a digital form? How does American Express do those notifications for tens of millions of customers, right? Because each of those customers is feeling like Amex understood them in that moment where they chose to make that notification.
And it's also it's interesting, right? This point of trust, because we're talking about how you gain the trust or how you lose the trust of your customer. But when it comes to banking, I think that every time that our bank brings a frustrating experience to you, every time that the bank treats you like they don't know you, it also diminishes or eliminates trust in them as well. So sometimes I think that personalization is the least that you can do to keep the trust of your customers, right? Because my life is in my bank account or bank accounts. You see how much I make, you see how much I spend. For those who enjoy their Pornhub account, their bank knows it. They know intimate details about you, right? How come you don't use that to my benefit, right? And that for me is as untrustworthy as if you creep me out, right? So it's just a very interesting topic, right? We could probably continue on, but personalization for me is becoming a tool to keep the trust of your customer, right?
Yeah, I had a customer tell me last year, she said, quote, I expect brands to use personalization to reward my loyalty.
Interesting discussion around customer expectations and how to calibrate those appropriately. I want to look forward and get your thoughts on what the emerging opportunities are in personalization that you're most excited about as you all think about the technologies that could have a greatest impact on this space over the next couple of years. What are you seeing and what are you genuinely excited about?
I'm really interested in financial education and how various financial services institutions can deliver education or advice to a range of ages. As I talk to customers, they understand that finances are complex and that they don't always have the full understanding to address that complexity, and they deeply want help from their banks in navigating that complexity.
So financial advice and financial wellness is one potential frontier for real.
Mm-hmm.
Others?
Financial education in Money Lion. I mean, can we have a panel that doesn't say AI? I mean, but if you think about personalization, or at least I think about personalization in financial services, and especially in the segment of the population that Money Lion serves, which is not the 1%, to me, using technology and AI to give the 99% the type of service that the 1% gets without having the costs associated with that, right? You can literally have somebody experience banking like with a private banker all through technology. But imagine how bad it would be if we use technology to communicate with somebody, but what we're saying, what the bot is saying, what the fake, I guess, person is saying doesn't make any sense. So we have to make sure that the content is there so then we can use technology for the communication to feel very natural. So I'm excited about that.
Okay, we did our duty. We said AI. Thank you, Cynthia, for helping us to check that box.
Yeah, for sure. I guess I'm excited about things at different levels, right? I'm excited about certain things for the customer, I'm excited about certain things for companies, and I'm excited about certain things for kind of society. Honestly, for customers, I'm so excited to have people actually help people work through their cash flow. Like, it doesn't matter if you're rich or you're poor. One of your number one problems is cash flow, right? And it's a hard nut to crack. It's a hard thing to help people work through that. But to Cynthia's point, most of the population hasn't gotten any help on that, right? Only the people who have millions and millions of dollars are getting that help historically, but technology is allowing for those folks to actually have someone who helps them through cash flow, which, if you look at it from a macroeconomic perspective, if we can just increase the number of people that have some savings by 10%, the meaningful impact that would have for the economy is massive, right? I think the second thing I'm excited for is for companies to start using personalization as a vehicle to drive profitability, right? Without hurting their best customers, which I think has been one of the bigger challenges that people are dealing with. And really, at the end of the day, I'm excited to have variability in the financial space, right? I'm excited to have a world in which we have products that actually have context about us and actually use that context to our advantage so that we don't have a situation where someone is being denied a credit card because of one event 5 years ago and because they're not considering the context. Like, there are millions of people today who don't get to where they need to get to for something that kind of isn't their fault, right? It's because they don't consider the rest of the context in that decision, and that's what keeps that person from progressing their life. And so that's the biggest thing that I'm excited about, is personalization as a way to empower people and to kind of have more empathy in a financial system that has felt a little bit cold.
I agree. That's awesome. I would add that when I think of what is the future or technologies that we're going to use, I think that we all know those technologies, AI and whatnot, we check all the boxes. But for me, it would be amazing, right, from a banking experience perspective, from a money experience perspective, right? Financial institutions could give me what I need when I need it in a way that is relevant, that I can easily understand, and that is going to be beneficial for me, and at the same time, they can do that in a way that is profitable for them, because obviously they're organizations, they're here to make money, they need to continue to make money. But if they can make money at a scale by giving customers what they need when they need it, even before they know they are going to need it, right? I think for me, that is the future of banking. If it's digital, if it's in person, if it's via phone call, if it's a chatbot, I don't care, as long as we finally can give to customers and to consumers what they need, and as long as we can use data to actually anticipate what they're going to need and be proactive. I think that is the future of banking, is being proactive and using technology to be proactive, to communicate in the way that the customer wants to receive that communication, and do it in a way that is scalable and profitable for you.
We've got some great questions, one of which builds on that and I think links back to Cynthia's previous point. How do you ensure that personalization is not a static task that is done once, but rather dynamic? So what does this look like on a continual basis? How might you be leveraging machine learning for those purposes?
I would love to tackle that. I think that, and I think of my own company and what we do, and we're constantly analyzing customer data, and we're constantly updating models. So, because the consumer is dynamic, right, and we move differently, things in life change, right? I think that in order to avoid being static, you just need to be constantly just reading data. It's not that you read data once. It's like ChatGPT, right? Updated until September 2021, right? And you cannot do that as a bank because I'm transacting with you all the time. So as long as you're capable of reading, analyzing, assimilating customer data real time, you will never be static, you know what I mean? And at the end of the day, as long as you're capable of very dynamically, right, change and customize based on that data, you're good to go. Obviously, that sounds like very complicated, But you can also simply say, you know what, even if I don't have the capacity to do everything real time, it's just like zillions and zillions and zillions of data, or I don't have a partner, right? Because again, like, you don't have to do it by yourself. There are fintechs that we exist to do that. You can even just say, you know what, we're gonna be updating our data, our customer data very frequently, and we're gonna be adapting our product, services, and communication as frequently as possible. So again, we can think of the ideal, but then a very simple approach is just make sure that you update yourself as well as your customers do, right?
I think the other piece of it from a technology perspective, the signals that you're getting from your customers are going to change all the time. And so when you're building your personalization engine, what you are not trying to do is say, this customer is this customer is that, this customer is this. You're just trying to understand the signals that you're getting. And so if you're building that framework, start from my first principles basis, right? And say, what are some basic linkages that I can assume? So when I see this behavior, it implies this type of activity. And then what do I want to do to somebody who's kind of in that part of their lives or dealing with that? If you build your platform that way, then as your customers live their lives and do things, and you get these underlying data points, your framework will match it into, okay, well, what type of situation is this, and how do we handle this type of situation, as opposed to making a predeterminate, like, classification of where people fit. And that way, you can evolve as your customers evolve, right? Which is, I think, what we all want from our products at the end of the day, that they follow us as we evolve through our lives and adjust to fit the needs that we'll have at different points in that journey.
I wanted to answer the other question. Can I?
Take a crack, yeah. Let's take a
Quickly,
crack,
because
and then
I think
we'll wrap
somebody's asking what's an MVP approach to personalization, and I think it's segmentation. So don't try to personalize, create segments, see if you can have some personas. That's one way. The other way is like use technology that already exists. I don't know if there's anyone here from Money Lion, but they will kill me if I didn't say, if you have a loan business, personalize the loans through Engine. But also, if you're in marketing, for example, and you use Segment, they have and they're not paying me for this, I'm just saying it because, I mean, I know it's a way. They have a product called Personas, which you can layer on Segment, and then like it's persona, so it's not totally personalized, but it's a way to segment the marketing that you do. So don't try to do it yourself. Just that's a good MVP plug and play.
Yeah, and instead of thinking about what you need to add or take on as your organization, like what can you stop doing? Like, so my example earlier, like stop sending refinance messages to anyone who just sold off their house, right? Like just stop that because it irritates customers.
Well, thank you all. We're really fortunate to have a set of leading practitioners have this conversation and have learned a lot, both around the potential, the challenges, and I'm excited to come back to this panel 5 years from now and see where are we in the world of personalized digital banking. So thank you again.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.